I'm not exactly the most disciplined guy in the world.
Hey,
At least, not naturally. I spent a good chunk of my life doing homework at 2 a.m., a few days off from the gym turned into a few years, and for a while I relied entirely on Windows Notepad to organize my life. Yep, that Windows Notepad. I wish I was joking. I could go on about how I didn't read, I didn't really care about what I ate, and basically let my primal animal instincts control everything, but at some point I realized my life had gotten off track. I thought about where I wanted to be in a year, 3 years, 5 years, and I realized deep down that I wouldn't get there. I wouldn't reach my personal goals, my career goals, and I'd struggle with my health the rest of my life unless something changed. I've built a lot of habits over the past few years, some of which stuck, others didn't, but from my productivity to my social life to just my overall well-being, there are 10 simple habits that made a massive difference. And the biggest one was learning to eat my vegetables. Okay, I don't mean that literally. That's actually not one of the habits. Although if you don't eat vegetables, you should. What I mean though is I formed habits that don't always feel good in a particular moment. Sometimes they'd suck and it would take all my willpower to follow through with them. But over time they compounded and dramatically improved my life. And the first one was prioritizing my physical health. Up until I was 18, I was pretty much indestructible. I played contact sports like football, I got into skateboarding, longboarding. My worst ever injury lasted maybe a month, most of them a few days. Within a few months of turning 18, it was like someone flipped a switch or sent my body the new software update, and I've been dealing with chronic pain ever since. A lot of you have probably noticed I stretch every day, I'm strengthening a lot of muscles, and not even the sexy ones, it's like my lower back and my hip flexors. It's not fun whatsoever, I have to force myself to do it, but I've realized that that's what my body needs right now. If your health declines, everything else goes with it. It doesn't matter how tough you think you are, it is the foundation for everything. Take care of your body on a regular basis, whatever that means to you. Alright, this next one is sure to start a debate. It's a habit I never thought I'd pick up, but it's regulating my caffeine intake. I love coffee. I've got the grinder, the scale, the vacuum sealed container, a Hario V60 and AeroPress. I think coffee is so fun. But 6 months ago, I challenged myself to quit caffeine for 30 days, and it changed me. At the time, I was regularly drinking 2 cups of coffee per day, roughly 200 milligrams of caffeine, but since quitting entirely and then experimenting with different amounts afterwards, I've found that I feel better and crash less if I stick to around 1 cup of coffee per day. This is just me and how my body works, but I've found that if I'm really reaching for that second cup, it usually means I'm falling behind on another aspect of my life, like sleep or nutrition or something. If I need a boost on a particular day, I'll go for a cup of green tea, or maybe I'll make a half cup of coffee or a small cup of matcha, but I really try to stay between 100 and 150 milligrams. Side note, if you lower your caffeine intake too quickly, you're gonna feel worse for the first couple of days, but over time you might like how you feel better. Getting a little bit abstract, this next habit just improved my life for the better. So growing up, I was never really the host of my friend group. Sometimes I was, but usually someone else made the plans. We'd hang out at someone else's house. However, after high school, as I met new people and made new friends, I had a bit of a dry spell where I wasn't doing much. I noticed a lot of people, myself included, would throw around the words sometime. We should grab dinner sometime, we should hang out sometime. Sometime never comes. Nowadays, if I meet someone new and I want to get to know them, I try to always set some sort of definite date. Even if we don't make plans right there on the spot, I try to say something as simple as, hey, I'll message you next week, which ensures a month doesn't go by or we just never talk again. That small change helped me get the ball rolling more, especially when meeting new people. Maybe it's obvious, but it's something I've made a habit of. Another habit I've really forced myself to keep up with is continuing to learn outside of school. My first job was doing video production at a digital marketing agency, and for the first 6 months, I was learning and growing like crazy. The transition from school and personal projects to a professional environment challenged me and forced me to grow a ton. However, that growth naturally slowed down over time. As I mastered the fundamentals, things got easier, more repetitive, and I knew if I wanted to keep progressing, I needed to be intentional in keeping up with my learning. Especially with AI absolutely exploding the past couple of years, I think it's more important now than ever to keep up with new technology, new tools, learn new skills in pretty much any industry. Personally, I learn a lot on YouTube, I've purchased courses, and while I'm not the most avid reader, I do read books on topics I want to learn more about. It doesn't even have to be career related. Learn about fitness, finance, self-help, whatever interests you and you think would help you grow, dedicate some time to it every week. All right, this next habit is incredibly difficult to build, but it's also really important to me, and that was lowering my phone usage. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. This one takes discipline. There are good weeks, there are bad weeks. It's a constant practice, but I think it's really important. I've tried a few different things, from setting time limits to deleting every app on my phone to something fun coming up in my next video, but learning to be on my phone less and do other things has only made me happier. It's not entirely about productivity, but just minimizing that itch to constantly check it, to constantly pull it out is so worth it. I know I sound like a preachy clickbait neuroscience news article or something, but practicing this has unquestionably made my life better. Moving on to productivity, one of the best investments I've made in myself is creating systems and templates to organize my life. I wasn't kidding in this intro. During my freshman year of college, I used Windows Notepad to organize everything. And to be fair, it worked. At the time, I didn't have all that much to keep track of. I just put important dates and little checklists in there. But as my life got more complicated, I knew I needed to get more organized. To keep track of my schedule, task lists, and everything else in my life, I'm currently using Notion and Google Calendar. On Google Calendar, I only put things like meetings, appointments, or events that happen at a specific scheduled time. I set a bunch of alerts because these are things I can't miss, and it syncs with my phone, which is great. And then there's Notion, which pretty much runs my life at this point. This could be an entire video in itself, but I've basically built out templates to streamline everything I do. Just for YouTube, with a single click, I can keep track of where a video is at. I've got documents set up to ideate titles, thumbnails, write an outline, shot list, research. You get the idea. Once I start a video, I've got a folder template in place as well. I've got a templated Premiere profile. Everything is just ready to go with a couple clicks. I'm constantly updating these systems to make them better, but finding ways to organize my life, my projects, and actually do it in a way that feels effortless, once it's set up, absolute game changer. All right, this is one I'm embarrassed to bring up. It's kind of more of a mindset than a habit, but it's the habit of facing my fears. The best example I can give is facing my horrible fear of public speaking. It's a pretty common one, but for me it got out of hand. In high school, I did everything I could to get out of it. One time I actually took a lower grade rather than present, and in college there was a time I was doing a presentation and I completely froze. For 5 minutes, I just stood there and said nothing. Okay, it was probably more like 5 seconds. I think we skipped ahead or my partner bailed me out or something. But I knew after that moment that if I didn't figure this out, it would hurt me the rest of my life. Instead of avoiding it like the plague, I actually signed up for a public speaking class. It was super uncomfortable. I still don't like public speaking, but it's somewhat tolerable now. And since then, I've tried to make it a habit of just attacking my weaknesses, no matter how silly or ridiculous I look, because the alternative is to, just suffer the rest of my life. It sucks in the short term, but in the long term, it's so much better. Next, let's talk about self-care. Basically, just dedicating time to activities that relax and rejuvenate me. This one is a little dangerous because it is easy to get carried away with thinking, oh, I worked hard, or I'm a little bit tired. Let me go watch 6 hours of Netflix and justify it as mandatory self-care. It's definitely a fine line, but the truth is, if I didn't push through fatigue at night and work on these videos during the weekend, they just wouldn't get made. But I've also realized that with creative work, I do have limits. Coming up with interesting ideas, brainstorming, writing, shooting, shot listing, editing, revising, doing voiceovers, all of it's incredibly mentally taxing. Some of it can be brute force no matter how tired I am, but at a certain point, if I keep pushing, I can technically get the video done, but it's gonna suck. I've learned that when I'm legitimately mentally drained and what I'm creating isn't all that good, it's time to go do something else. Allowing myself to take sometimes an hour, sometimes an evening, sometimes the entire weekend if necessary, to just go do things I enjoy, relax, rejuvenate. It really is so important, and I almost always come back to the project with more passion, feeling more creative, and that's how I do my best work. The trick is not to get carried away though. And while we're on the topic of self-care, let's talk about sleep. There was a period in my life where I got 6.5 hours of sleep pretty much every night. Unsurprisingly, I drank a lot of coffee during that time, and to be honest, it worked really well for me, but it doesn't work so well anymore. Over the past year, I've gotten a lot more strict with my sleep schedule. Right now, I go to bed at 11 p.m. and wake up at 7 p.m. almost every day. I don't nail it every night. That window shifts a little bit in either direction, but I know if I can get in the ballpark, I'm gonna feel good. And the final and most important habit I've built is consistently reflecting on my life and trying out new habits. There are an infinite number of habits to build, but there's a finite amount of time in the day. And what works for me now might not work for me in 6 months. But I've tried to become a lot more aware of how my life's going and checking in to see if there is any way I can improve it. Am I making progress in the gym? Am I feeling brain dead at 3 p.m.? Am I eating vegetables? I can't fix a problem that I'm not consciously aware of, so checking in from time to time and really reflecting on that is super important. If you made it this far, I hope this video gave you some new ideas for habits that you can try out. If so, definitely consider subscribing. I've got a lot of fun challenges coming soon, and I'll see you in the next one.